Hi, everybody. I am delighted to be here with Rhian Kiernan, and we're going to be talking about enabling recruiters with all of the recruitment marketing and employer branding type stuff that they need. Rhian's done a lot of work in that. She's got frameworks and all sorts. Rhian, give us a quick introduction to you first of all. Tell us about you and your career.
Sure, thanks, Adam. Good to be here. Yeah, so my current role, I'm Global Head of Employee Brand and Recruitment Marketing here at Haleon. If you're not familiar with Haleon, we span off from GSK, the huge machine just coming up to 4 years ago with products such as Sensodyne, Centrum, Voltaren. So a huge challenge in itself, right? To be able to elevate an employee brand for a business that didn't exist. So that was the challenge I took on just over 4 years ago. Previously to that, I've grown up in talent acquisition, cut my teeth in recruitment in agency days many moons ago, and worked at some large organizations such as IBM in recruitment kind of operational roles, and then things like Sony, Dixon's car phone. So really the journey has taken me from recruitment through to kind of the love now that I have for employee brand recruitment marketing.
I've got to say, I've never said this to you, but I'm really envious of all those brilliant brands you've got on your CV. I am a real brand snob, and I love big brands, and I just love the whole big company environment. And I think you were with Carphone the first when we first met. We were doing a lot of work with Dixon's, and Dixon's merged with Carphone, and I love
Mm,
retail as well.
me too.
Um, it's just there's just so much. It's like there's just so much stuff going on all the time. Like very exciting.
Yeah, you have to be able to adapt, be a bit of a chameleon, and be able to, work at pace and speed. Change is forever coming. Like you, I love retail. I spent some time at the White Company. It's an incredible opportunity there. Working with their value proposition, Pride still stands today, award winning. But that sense of kind of there, it was kind of Christmas in July, right, where we were working to drive volumes for retail stores, to set them up for success for Christmas, where they make their biggest bottom line. So, I mean, for me, I think fast moving consumable goods, where I currently am now, with change of direction, for example, um, you know, the cold and flu season. We don't have a good cold and flu season here at Haleon. It's going to impact our numbers. So I think that sense of being able to adapt, being able to accelerate from a recruitment perspective in terms of hiring plans, giving our people, our talent organization the right tools. And I'm sure we'll come on to it, but I've always been banging the drum. I talk a lot about advocacy and strategy around the advocacy area, but I talk a hell of a lot around recruiters as marketeers. And that's been since the days of my IBM days, that kind of whole direct model when it started to move away from agencies, and heavily reliant on RPOs. I'm really focusing on these talent communities, these talent professionals as marketeers. And I think it's still taking time. And I think, the job spec for a recruiter is very different now to what it was some 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I've spent a lot of the last 10, 15 years in this area
Mm,
as well. We both have. And I couldn't agree more with you. I think that recruiters are now I mean, the job's not actually hugely different to what it was when you and I first started in it, but I think our expectation of recruiters as marketers
mm,
has grown because the channels have changed in that time, and their opportunity to be a marketing force
mm.
and be a channel of the employer brand it is much different to when you and I first started and we had fax machines and not a lot else.
God, the days of timesheets and fax machines at Reed, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
I
So
think, yeah.
yeah, let's bring it all up to date though. You've
Mm.
done a lot of work around like frameworks and things like that, and just talk us through what you think. I'm head of talent acquisition at some company that's not done very much in this area.
Mm.
What are you getting me to think about, and how are you getting me to structure it all?
Yeah, I think first of all, so I think it's great examples I can take from Haleon. But if you are in the TA industry and you're leading a team, I think it's looking at kind of one capability in the team currently, what you currently have versus what you potentially need. And then also really focusing on what that tech stack looks like. So how are you enabling the recruiters you have to reach those channels? Also really helping the recruiter to set their personal brand. And, you know, we've got the employee brand, but it's super important that those recruiters are seen on the external market as a brand themselves. So there is a number of things we can be doing. I'm happy to talk you through some of those add-ins where I see kind of the key toolkits that these teams need, but also building kind of a champion-like model. It's been quite different here at Haleon. For example, my role and my team's roles, it's a global role. I manage a global team across Asia Pac, EMEA, Americas, and LATAM. And we're quite a small team, and you usually find that employee brand, but we sit within culture and engagement. So we've got a real pulse on the internal listening of the business to be able to then authentically tell that story externally to drive awareness of Haleon as an employer of choice in a very, very busy market. Those recruiters need to be able to understand the internal messaging, to be able to then have the skills to articulate that externally when they're talking to candidates. And that's different, right? Depending on whether we're looking at graduate hiring, early careers, right through to, you know, executive team hiring, you know, within executive hiring. So I think the number one priority is kind of, first of all, looking at the capability within the team and seeing where those gaps are. Secondly, working really closely, and whether that's your corporate affairs teams, whether that's somebody like myself that sits specifically for employee brand, to really understand kind of where are those champions in your TA team, whether it's local, globally, that really show opportunity for them to kind of grow in this area, and build and make sure they've got the capacity to do that. Recruiters are super busy, and I think just being very, very clear of what that role entails. So the champion model we set up here at Haleon initially was a really great way for us to reach into local markets. And I am talking from a global standpoint here. And we made sure that we were connecting with these champions, you know, on a weekly basis. So I currently have employee brand leads in those markets. And we built out a framework that enabled the recruiters to cherry pick, if you like, opportunities, what was relevant for their local market. So we built kind of a platform that they could activate, which created an integrated approach. And those channels, there was a mix of channels there. So I'll give you some examples, helping them understand what a good LinkedIn post looks like. They're not all copywriters, you know, we're not all trained as copywriters. So, and also giving them the confidence, right, to start to write for themselves. So being able to articulate the offering, the purpose, and be able to write, you know, really good job descriptions and job adverts, right? So again, giving them the elements and the training to do just that, the confidence to do just that. Our role also is to make sure that their career site, right, it has all the features and all the elements for a great candidate experience. So that we can direct their posts on LinkedIn, for example, or other job boards directly into that hub, the career site. So our role then is to make sure that's up to date. And their help is needed there in terms of potentially identifying their hiring managers, you know, who are the hiring managers they're working with? Are there hiring managers we can also take externally to market? So it's not just about the recruitment function, it's the whole business, you know, I believe should be ambassadors. But the recruiters are a key part of that. They're working day to day with those hiring managers. Other options we've got, you know, is really looking at kind of the referral offering as well, making sure that that piece is at play when they're having those conversations. And them helping our hiring managers become what we call talent magnets, right? So they're close to the hiring managers. They may be working with 6, 7, you know, up to 10, 20 at some times, making sure that their elements, giving those training to the hiring managers to support with either an elevator pitch or creating content or posts on LinkedIn. I think, you know, recruiters, as I say, have got a long list of things to do. I think by simplifying and giving them the toolkits, putting it into their hands, but also really importantly, building that as accountability in their role. So what? We've got all of these incredible tools. We've got this great tech stack, but if we're not holding those, you know, those talent people accountable a bit as well, so part of their objectives, then it is become the so what. It's not a priority. It takes a little bit of time to get there, Adam. you know, it wasn't overnight that we were able to build that into objectives. Actually, they just set off this year. But we've definitely seen through that champion model as a recruiter being a champion, and then them training the trainer, if you like, within their markets has really helped us to elevate them as employers that are, you know, selling our brands and articulating it in the right way.
I love this. So when I worked in recruitment marketing at the company that is now called Have Us People, I remember hearing somebody came and did a talk at our UK conference, and I said, "How many of you are in sales?" And like a smattering of people put their hands up. That guy did this, asked the same question in America, "How many of you are in sales?" Every person in the room put their hand up and said that they were in sales, from the finance people to the IT people, because
100%.
the US attitude then was all about everything in the company is directed towards sales, Whereas in the UK, it was it wasn't quite like
It's
that.
not my job.
It's not my job. Exactly.
Yeah.
So like it feels like you're reminding me of that, because what you're reminding me of is like if we can give the recruiters and hiring manager champions everything they need to be even, because they're showing the willing, they're showing the competence, and they are like if they can do things even better, then it'll inspire everybody else to do it. So it's like a movement, right? I guess.
100%, 100%. And you know, where we are now at Haleon, you know, fast forward for, you know, 4 years, everyone tells me I bang the drum internally. I was just having a conversation this week with the head of corporate affairs, and he said, "You're constantly banging that drum." I've been talking about this for a long time, and it's around. I would love to see all employees, right, have a objective, right? It's everyone's responsibility. I think, you know, the newness of Haleon as a brand, right? We're not quite 4 years old yet. July the 18th, we're coming up to that. So I call us kind of a toddler on a balance bike. We've got rid of the stabilizers. But actually, at first, people didn't even know how to pronounce Haleon. So that was a first campaign. How do we talk? How do we pronounce Haleon? Now, fast forward, you know, we are starting to really, the executive team, you'll see a lot more posts coming out from them, and the encouragement now of our talent pioneers, our talent teams, being able to sit in a talent directive meeting, or and we call them RAMs here. So that first initial recruitment meeting where you're talking about the job, we've really elevated those meetings. That's your first point. That's that marketing piece, and enabling the hiring manager. So we enable for them to enable, and it's a cascade. And as you said, a movement. And I think if any organization is not thinking about advocacy currently at this moment, I think you really are on the back foot. I think it can become complex, and I think the most important thing, if any talent director, talent manager is really looking at kind of what they have in front of them right now, is I think the core of this is about what we call here recruitment marketing brilliant basics. And it is really simplifying, not overwhelming, but simplifying. So what are the key elements that you will need for, you know, for those brilliant basics? And again, that's back to making sure they're branded externally and know how to talk to the market, know how to talk to the audience they're hiring for, be knowledgeable as well. I think where we see weaknesses are some of our recruiters now really aren't understanding what else is happening outside their current 5, 10, 15 roles they're working on. What is the competitive market doing? And I think being able to broaden that talent insight piece really should form part of their basic day to day, you know, being hungry to see what's happening on the news, being hungry to see what's happening across other organizations. But, you know, as a recruiter, you know, and like all employees, they're a pivotal point on every organization's growth journey. Right. And I think that everyone should be co-creating throughout the business for us to kind of move forward for both productivity, you know, and growth. But there are some really kind of simple things, you know, the things I talked to them a little bit, but those elevator pitches, you know, getting that employee engagement activity around content generation, and really familiarizing themselves kind of with, you know, the social piece as well, and how to drive themselves as an advocate. I think, yeah, sorry, go on.
You've talked about quite a few different like content, what I would call content formats, job descriptions and job adverts and social media posts and elevator pitches and things like that. You want people to be themselves.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I remember back to the days when I started in recruitment, and you got scripts and things like that, and everything was really prescribed. It could be. What do you think in a world now where people have got their own megaphone through their
Mm.
LinkedIn profiles or whatever? What do you think? How do we balance giving people the script versus encouraging them to be themselves? How do we balance this? Because it's a
Yeah.
challenging one.
It's a great question. I talked to Haleon because this is kind of where I've been for the last 4 years, and I think it has been a super challenge to do exactly that. Because we were a brand that didn't exist, we had a lot of restriction over the brand, and rightly so, right? It was a brand new brand in the market, and so we needed to be really careful to not move too far out of that framework and dilute the brand being so fresh and new. So we did have to put, and we do put guidelines on that. But there's social training, which is really important. But also there are some key, when we talk about the elevator pitch, some key things that we always talk about our purpose for health with humanity, always look at sustainability. And we've created a space where we can direct any of our employees to really understand kind of perhaps the history, the opportunities. But I think we want to give them the confidence. We want to build that trust. Otherwise, people are not going to get on that community piece, right? If we're putting too much strict, because people become worried about what they say. We have implemented a platform to use. I've used Everyone Social in the past. I'm currently working in partnership with Hootsuite, but there are a number of different advocacy platforms. They really help to manage that content piece, because it does go through an approval process, right? So they're free to write, but it will come through so we can see all the postings. I think that's given our teams a lot of confidence as well, because they know there's kind of a final kind of not sign off, but a final eyes over it. So if people aren't feeling confident to write independently, they also could go through that kind of advocacy platform route. So I think it's also what we've really encouraged is it being leader led. So you will see our HET members.
Yes.
Shout out to Natalie, who's our America president. She does a brilliant job, and I think it's that if we are seeing our leaders, if we're seeing other members, managers doing that, then it feels like it's okay and gives other people confidence. So I think it's a trickle effect.
I couldn't agree more. It's role modeling, isn't it? If you can,
Yeah,
if the CEO and the HET, Haleon executive team, I guess that is.
totally.
Yeah, I mean, if they are out there and they're advocating for the brand, which by default is advocating for the employer brand, I think that other people are looking at, well, I want to be a leader. What behaviors do I need to display? And they want to be part of it. Hiring managers are such an untapped employer brand channel for most
Absolutely.
organizations.
Yeah, we've got some rock stars in our organization, some real rock stars, and I feel really proud. From a data and text perspective, we've really started to see some real shining lights come out of that area. They're unstoppable now, right? We've got an incredible internal program around data and AI, called Data Camp, which has enabled everybody, no matter where you sit within the organization, to come and do these data training. So I think we've got a lot to talk about, and I think that's really important for any talent director or anyone that sits in my position, really understanding, because the business is complex. There is so much going on, and there's so much missed opportunity at times. Sometimes I'll see one of our brands has done, I'll use an example, but Voltarin for the marathon, for example, they're running at million miles to drive these campaigns, and sometimes we see things externally before we've had a chance to get on that, on that train, if you like, and really elevate it. So I think, as any talent director or any employee brand lead, really understanding internally what's available, what is that narrative, where are those opportunities, and then planning ahead, and not overkilling it as well. So we know there's so many days, for example, throughout the year, which are opportunities to say, right, this is the business they're really leaning into a mental health awareness week, for example, but making sure that you're not overkilling it. So what are the 2 or 3 focus for you that year that is going to be, you're going to tell a really authentic story to that, and build the teams, whether they're hiring managers in market in different regions, to come on that campaign together. Your recruiters are crucial in identifying that, because they're talking to the brand managers, they're in these conversations. So changing their mindset to also be looking for that storytelling or the narrative and bring it back into the global team. I talk a lot. My team will smile if they hear this back, but my team's job is to kind of activate and support and train, obviously deal with the bigger integrated campaigns, but it's not our role. If the brand isn't resonating, the employing brand isn't resonating in the market, my feedback to that market is, what are you doing to enable that? Not what can we do for you? What are you doing to enable that? Have you got the tools? Have you seen the toolkit? What training are you missing? Making sure we're handing that over, everything they need to drive that in the local market, because they are the people that are living and breathing in that office space. So I think that helps it become more authentic. It's definitely not the global role for us to be driving out those more local campaigns or messaging. I think, again, back to you said at the beginning of this conversation, Adam, I think, there is a lot you could do, but I think it's about starting it with the brilliant basics, and starting small, and then begin to kind of snowball it from there. Yeah.
Understood. Rhian, thank you very much for
Good.
no, absolutely understood. Rhian, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today. You've got a couple of things coming up. I think you've got like EB Club, I think you're doing. Tell us what you're doing coming up.
So for sure, I've done a couple of EB clubs this year, so a couple more of those coming up with Steve Ward and the gang. Wreckfest, so I'm mighty looking forward to that. Believe it or not, I've never ever been, so watch out. But yeah, so Wreckfest, and I like to kind of keynote speak, so lots of gigs over the summer. So thanks ever so much, Adam.
Great to see you.
You too.